Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Jesse Heller, the Marketing Director at FAE Business Systems Group. Thanks for taking time out of your day to learn about document management and how it's relevant to your business. You know, I used to think that document management was about storing documents electronically. While, yeah, it does that, there's so much more to the technology. Perry Lynn from Altic is going to show us what I mean. Altic is the Sage-endorsed partner for document management with their DocLink solution. If there's questions that you guys have throughout the presentation today, feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll be here on the other side monitoring those, and I'll pass them over as they come in. And if we don't have time to get to them during our presentation today, we'll definitely follow up with you via phone call or email. So with that, thanks again, Perry Lynn. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Well, let's start out by first kind of exploring, why do companies consider document management in the first place, right? What's going on in the organization that you should even consider it? So what you see here on the screen are a couple of these different little honeycombs, and I want to address each one. So for instance, if right now you are storing documents in a filing cabinet, or maybe on the warehouse floor, right, or off-site storage. I've heard all sorts of different kinds of things. I was on site with a prospect yesterday, and they store some of their documents in an external building that they not so lovingly refer to as the shed, you know. So if we really think about these documents going to these different places, we also have to think about how much time it takes to actually get something out of those particular places when we want to access something. And so there we have time as an element, right, for possibly if you're wasting time there and you could be spending it somewhere else, you know, that could be an implication of the business. All right, so if you're storing documents in filing cabinets, off-site storage, in the shed, down in the dungeon, on the warehouse floor, then we may have something to talk about. Let's now explore a little bit on business processes. So the number one thing that people come to me and they say, hey, Perry Lynn, we want to streamline our AP invoice approval. The reason why is because especially if companies are multi-location, right, they may be incurring even additional costs, not only above and beyond the frustration of just routing things manually, but they may have a cost of moving it between locations. However, let's say that you're not a multi-location department. Think about how you're routing your AP invoices today. Are they getting lost? Do you have people calling you asking, hey, I don't remember getting this invoice? Right, there's a lot of cost calculations that we can wrap around that equation, such as, are you missing early pay discounts, right, because it takes a long time to get those invoices through? Are you paying late fees, right? There's another cost calculation. Or is it simply so incredibly annoying that it's time to take a look at technology to really solve that particular issue? All right, let's talk about security for a moment. We have many people that are not only looking at DocLink for the purposes of AP automation, but they also want to think about it for all sorts of different areas in the company. Let's take a look at HR and talk about it for a moment, because it's a simple, easy go-to, right? You only want certain employees to have access to certain documents. So you can do that by leveraging DocLink security. Not only that, now we're going to flip back to accounting, right? Audit. So many people become extremely frustrated with the audit process when and let's just focus on the documentation part, right? You've been asked to produce certain documents. All right, this kind of goes back to that storage element. You have to go find those documents and then present them back to the auditor. So number one, by having everything stored centrally in DocLink, you have vastly more easier access, documents at your fingertips, and we also have some tools that we can help give you that make the audit much easier. So if you're stressing about the audit and there are document-based issues that are preventing you from having a great experience, then there's something that we can do there. Now, later on in the presentation, I'm going to show a slide that can help you kind of think about those areas where you can truly reduce costs. And there's going to be two different flavors. We've got hard costs, right, physically money that's being spent that can be saved, and we're going to have soft dollar savings, which is really more about your time savings element. And it can be a hard dollar savings as well if you're growing, and at some point in time, if you don't apply technology, you're going to have to hire someone, right? So that would be then a hard dollar cost savings. All right, and the whole point as well is we're wanting to really drive productivity in the organization, save you time, and allow each of the individual staff members to go after either their primary function or more strategic initiatives, right? Okay. So normally I would do a poll here. So for those of you that are feeling chatty, right, you can go ahead and chat back and we might kind of take a poll at the end. But I'd be curious to know, just here on the phone today, how many people, and this is rhetorical, but you can chat back to Jesse in the chat feature, how many people are really storing documents in filing cabinets, right? Is that most of you? Is that some of you, right? Or have some of you actually taken the leap to say, well, we totally get it. We know we need to go paperless, so we're going to move into a network file share, right? And that's great because you're now saving some of those cost savings about traditional paper saving utilities. But the problem with the network file share is that once you break those links, right, then it's very hard to find those documents. And what we're going to be showing you today is how DocLink solves the issues that we've been talking about and what it looks like, so you have an idea of what this would look like and how your user community would embrace it. But just as a quick recap, there are 3 powerful questions that you can ask yourself, and if any of these kind of resonate with you, then we probably should be talking about, okay, how can DocLink help your organization go paperless and streamline processes, right? But quite simply, are you touching, moving, and filing a lot of documents? Yes or no, right? How about approval processes? Are they manual and inefficient? And are you looking at strategically minimizing or eliminating data entry, right, which is going to allow for you to grow without adding headcount? So if any of those resonate, then we may want you to take the next step. And I'll just showcase for you today and really invite you to reach out to Jesse. If anything that we're talking about today resonates with you, contact Jesse. And then I'd love to do just an introductory call where we can kind of explore how you're processing documents today and what does that look like in your as-is business process. And then by knowing that, it makes it very, very simple for me to help you with a preliminary quote, because we want to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of that budget. And then also we can move into a product demonstration where I can show you DocLink through the lens of your process and really show you how we can help you, okay? But let me introduce you to DocLink. When I think about DocLink, I really think about it in these kind of 4 functional pillars with some gravy on the top. So the biggest element is that we can capture both internally generated documents and externally generated documents, right, for the purposes of search and retrieval. And this is really important because we're going to show you can search and retrieve in DocLink via a mobile device, via the web, or within Sage as well. All right, so that's really important. We're going to talk about the power of workflow in this very powerful and configurable workflow engine that allows for you to route documents throughout the organization, right? That's really important. We also have functionality that allows for you to send documents outside of the organization based on a schedule. It's actually not only based on a schedule, but it's also based on the preference of the end user on how they want to get that. So they want to get it via email, right? Do they still need printing, or do they want to use fax, right? Is that's still viable out there in the world today? So that's another possibility. So if you are manually printing things like an AR invoice and joining it up with a signed delivery receipt or something of that nature, we can probably help you with that as well. But lastly, what we're going to talk about today is DocLink Smart Forms. And simply speaking, it's a tool that allows for you to replace your paper-based forms today, or Excel, right? So think about things like an expense report, or a requisition, right, that precedes a purchase order, or a credit card statement, right? So all of those are possible, and we'll dive into that as well. But let's kind of go back to this concept of search and retrieval, right? There are many ways to capture documents, and I want to show you, once we've captured documents, how easy it is to get it out of the system, and why I see that this is infinitely better than using filing cabinets and storage and things of that nature, right? So the big pieces here are, you've got all the documents stored in one centralized document library called DocLink, right? You can view documents from within Sage, but the big deal here is that you've got documents at your fingertips. You've got really rich search criteria from which to actually search for these documents. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So I've signed into DocLink, and you can see here, I'm going to start over here on the left-hand side, that I can handle multi-company. So if you want to look for documents across multi-companies, we can just select those. Next step is I want to choose from this drop-down here, right, what documents do I want to view? Now, a quick note, you see many documents in this column because I'm wanting you to start thinking very broadly about the potential. This is going to be restricted based on who the user is and what documents they're allowed to view, right? So I want to say, hey, I want to see that AP invoice with an invoice number. You see that here next as 36, right? I click search, and here I get my return set. But I can do something even better, right? I can now drill down and say, well, show me everything that relates to invoice number 36. And now I can see the entire packet. And if I want to look for those documents, I just do a simple Control-A and Control-O to open, and here they are. I've always been wanting to do a race, right? Have like a fictitious filing cabinet, and then do DocLink on one side, and then do a race, and then see kind of really what that timing looks like. But you can also imagine, you know, how much time savings it is to really have these documents now at your fingertips and enable you to respond to any questions. And don't forget, this is an enterprise-wide solution. So walk around the company today, take a look at the filing cabinets, and just ask yourself, what are in those filing cabinets? What would it mean to your organization if you would be able to have more easier access to them, right? Now, let's take a look at viewing documents within Sage. So I showed you viewing within DocLink. This is going to be especially appropriate if maybe we've gone enterprise-wide and we have users outside of Sage that need access to documents. Now, for those people that are Sage users, right, you can be right in the Sage windows, and you see it highlighted here on the screen. When you purchase DocLink, the View Documents and Index button gets embedded on those screens, such that when we're on this screen and we want to view the related documents, all we do is click that button, and voila, here are the documents that relate to that. Okay, so it's very simple. Now, the big questions here to ask yourself is really about how much time are you spending doing these kinds of items that you're seeing on the screen, right? And if you do a little bit of a calculation on the side, you can start understanding, you know, how important it is to consider document management for your organization. Okay, all right, so that's search and retrieval. What I want to go into next is that next pillar of functionality called workflow. And we call it workflow, but it's really about streamlining business processes. And I want to talk to you about it through the lens of accounts payable, because I really think that if you get it for accounts payable, you'll be able to apply that logic across any particular business process, all right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we would process an invoice in DocLink, and we'll talk about the areas that are really important for you as an end user, and then what it means to the business, right? Okay, here we go. So same screen, right? Right now I'm going to open up our workflow. I'm actually signed in as the administrator today because I want to show you many different things. If I was signed in just as an individual user, I wouldn't see all of these workflows, right? I would only see the one that I had been assigned to. So I'm going to take the role as AP. So AP is signing into the system, and I'm now able to view all the documents that are in my workflow for processing. Now, you probably are wondering, well, how did they get there, right? There is an import utility that is allowing us to bring invoices right from email directly into workflow. If they are hard copy invoice, then we would have scanned it on a normal scanning, or multifunction device, and we can bring it into workflow that way as well. But let's open up an invoice and let's talk about what we can do. So let me first introduce you to the screen. So on this side, we're going to be looking at this actually a little bit later. We've got our approvals. Maybe I want to approve this or deny it or do some notes. We've got our document here in the middle. And I really want to call your attention over here to the right-hand side. This is called our GL distribution stamp. This is an area that we can capture just the header information. We can apply coding to this invoice. And this piece here is deeply integrated to Sage. And there's also some things that we can do to minimize the data entry. So if I know if I've set up a template for this particular vendor, I can click on my From Template button right there on the screen. Or I can just simply come in and fill out all of this information if I want to. If we are entering, for instance, vendor code, right, vendor name could automatically populate and vice versa because we are already knowing of that information that exists in Sage. And if you are using default account codes tied to the vendor master, those are going to pop in automatically as well. And I just point that out because it's a nice way of streamlining data entry. Okay, once we are done with that entry, then we're going to lock it down for editing as one option, or if in your particular case your users participate in the coding process, then we can leave that open for editing. In this case, I'm going to lock it down, but it does create the second page, which really nicely organizes that data so that the approver still has visibility into how we've coded that invoice. So the next step is I want to send it off to the approver, right? I can choose from that drop-down list. That's option number one, or we can apply automation so that based on maybe GL account code number or amount or another criteria that's important to you, we don't have to choose from the drop-down list. It's just going to be analyzed and it will go through the workflow based on the rules that you have set up. Okay, but here I am. I'm just kind of zooming in to kind of highlight for you the possibilities of doing things like sticky notes and highlighter tools and freehand drawing. So there's also some really super cool things that you can do there as well. Okay, so I've sent that email off, or excuse me, the invoice off to the next approver in the cycle. So the next step is that you have some options. We can send out an email alert to that particular individual and let them know that they've got invoices to approve. Or if they're not involved in the coding process, we may actually want to just send them an email. It's got the invoice attached. There's some information that you can put here in the body. And these are live buttons. So when you click approve or reject, then it's going to send that invoice to the next step in the process. And for those folks that have a lot of users really moving towards true mobile applications, you can do that through the mobile device as well. All right, so let's take a look at maybe we want the CFO or that next approver to participate in coding. They can also sign into the application, take a look at that particular document and invoice, do their approvals. Remember, we talked about that. Apply those annotations if that's necessary. It's just a secondary option for the notes area. They can also participate in coding, right, if that's part of your business process. And then they'll be sending it off to the next step in workflow. And once it goes to AP can either import that, moving a transaction into Sage automatically, or there's even an option of taking a whole group of improved invoices and pushing those into Sage as well. And then, of course, we're kind of back to that initial search and retrieval functionality that we talked about, which was, all right, here's that transaction that we've now created in Sage. Yes, we can view that related document, right? Or maybe we actually want to look at all documents related to a vendor. So that same view documents functionality exists on many different screens in Sage application. Right, so here we're showing it through the lens of vendor inquiry and showing documents that relate to that particular vendor. So to finish off the process, we also have the ability to automatically capture and index checks. And when I say index, what I mean is that we are capturing the image of the check. We are also performing this automatic indexing, which is capturing data about that check. That's important because we want to take that check number and push it back to the invoices that it covered, because we are enriching the entire data set about this packet, and we can now look for all documents related to a check number, a vendor name, a vendor ID, the invoice number, a GL account code, right? All of that data now becomes searchable. Right? And the whole point there is giving you very, very rich search criteria to have documents at your fingertips. All right, so here's some questions. This is the if you need to section, right? So if you're spending time in these areas, then this is probably something that we should be considering together, right? Is it difficult, right? Finding documents that are out for approval. Are you paying late fees? Do you need to, strategically go after early pay discounts, right? Are you doing double data entry? And what I mean by that is many people tell me that they get their invoice via email, they print it out, they put a rubber stamp on it, they write in information like date and GL account code and things of that nature, and then they route it for the approval, one or more, and then it comes back in, and they now need to import that transaction or create that transaction in Sage. Well, what if we just simply gather data initially, enhanced the data as it moved through the approvals, and then imported it, right? So it's a much more streamlined, efficient, better use of time overall. And I love this question at the bottom because I think it's so relevant. It's really about what can you do individually, to help move the company forward? And is it about streamlining processes, to be able to grow and not add headcount? I think that those are important considerations and something that we can really help you with. All right, so we've been talking about the DocLink application. And DocLink has a kind of like a starter kit, if you will. Called Paperless Plus, and the reason why it's called Paperless Plus is because it hinges on Paperless Office, right, which is already capturing some documents. So the big thing with the Paperless Plus application is that you get all of these View Documents buttons. Remember, we talked about that. So if you're right in those screens, you can click on the View Documents button and view the documents that relates to those transactions. But it also really extends the functionality of Paperless Plus or Paperless Office overall. You can capture all of those documents for other people that are not Sage users to access. You can round it out by storing other documents into the system, right? You get that powerful workflow to do invoice or AP automation, right? Invoice approvals, and really set you up to have a true enterprise-wide document management system and hopefully then fulfill your own paperless vision, right? So that kind of encapsulates the Paperless Plus application, right? Still DocLink. And I wanted to cover some of the extended functionality for you as well. So for those folks that need a browser agnostic experience, right? So you have a lot of traveling work people, and they maybe want to access DocLink through the browser, right? Explorer, Firefox, Safari. Then we can use DocLink through what's called our web client. And so you'd have functionality of search and retrieval and workflow approvals and things of that nature. Now, some of our customers have also extended this as a portal so that you can actually use this for your customers to come and look at their documents, or vendors to look at their documents. So that's just another way of kind of extending functionality if you need it. Let's look at those smart form toolkits, right? We talked about that. And what I love about the smart form toolkit is it really is that, a toolkit. And once you buy the application, then you can do many, many different things with it. You can create a document. You can index different documents. But rather than go through kind of like these elements, I want to give you specific examples, because when we first rolled it out, I know for me, I had a hard time understanding, well, what does that really mean? What does that really, really look like? So here are some examples that are probably going to resonate with you. And so number one that we have been implementing is absolutely expense report processing, right? So that's number one. Number two in popularity is this credit card. It really should say credit card statement reconciliation, right? Where you get a master statement. We would want to get it in CSV, right? We can bring that into DocLink, into a smart form, chop it up by card holder, and then use the power of workflow to send those transactions to that user so that they can attach receipts, do coding if necessary, and send that back through the approval process. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And the whole point is really still going back to streamlining processes, providing you one tool to do everything for your organization. But let's take a look at an example, because I think that that's the best way to showcase the product for you. And if you can understand it in one area, then I think it really sets you up to understand how you would apply that to other areas as well. All right, so let's talk about expense reports. This is how we use it internally and is super, super popular. So if you're looking for a replacement to Excel or paper-based expense reports, this may be the tool for you. So how would we do it, right? We would use our mobile application, right, in order to capture the receipt. So here it is. I want to capture a receipt, right? I simply click Add Page. I can actually use my camera and take a picture of that receipt, or if I already took a picture, then I can use my gallery in order to simply select it. I can add an additional page if I want, and then what we want to have happen next is we want you to give a little bit of meaning to that particular document. So some of these fields will automatically populate, reducing data entry. Some you'll have to actually apply. So the date, the company, and the name and the date will default to today's date. So you can change the date and then, of course, add the amount. And if it's an expense, then, of course, probably a description would be very helpful. And then once you're done with that, you can then upload that receipt into the actual expense report. So I want to show you two different examples of what the expense report could look like. And the reason why is because it is a toolkit. So you get to decide what fields you're going to be using and how it's going to look for your organization. So here's one example, and here's another example. Right? But ultimately, when we have created the expense report, we're going to physically use that data to create a document, right, expense report, and then we're going to drive that through a workflow for approval. So you'll notice here that we have expense reports going through the approval cycle. The one in blue here is the one that's highlighted, and it's also saying, hey, I also have a receipt, right, related to this particular expense report. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what that can look like. So that, my friends, really kind of brings us to what I had planned to showcase for you today. It's really about thinking about where are your paper-based pains and bottlenecks. Are those paper-based pains and bottlenecks either, number one, frustrating, or do they have some kind of financial impact to the organization that warrants making an investment in technology? Right, that's what it's really about. So in terms of a next step, if what we've been talking about today has resonated with you, I would love a chance to maybe meet with you. So give Jessie a call. Tell Jessie, yes, I want to talk with Perry Lynn further. I want to talk about what we're doing in our business today. We can look at the lens, through the lens of where are your paper-based pains and bottlenecks. And then through that, I can work with the FAY team to work up a quote for you so you have a clear understanding of what the investment may look like. And then we can also work towards doing a live product demonstration so I could really show you how DocLink can meet your needs and help your company grow strategically. So Jessie, I think with that in mind, we can either open it up for questions, and if there are no questions, then we can close for today.
Thanks, Perry Lynn. Yeah, it was really comprehensive. I think that you covered everything people were looking to see. There's no questions right now at this time, but as you said, feel free to reach out to me if anything does pop up after the webinar, and we'll do our follow-up on our end with you, be able to send you the recording and touch base with you regarding the content from today. So thanks, Perry Lynn.
You're very welcome, and I'll definitely make sure to reach out to everyone and make sure that there are no kind of lingering questions as well. So thank you so much, Jessie. I appreciate the opportunity today.
Great. Thanks again. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye.